afternoon and welcome to the TUG webinar. We will be turning things over in just a moment to the focus representatives as we talk about steering rebates in the right direction and maximizing profitability for Infor users. Before we get started, a couple of housekeeping announcements. The presentation will last approximately 40 minutes, allowing time for questions and answers. So if you'd just be so kind as to type any questions you might have into the question bank on your control panel, they will be addressed at the conclusion of the presentation. So at this time, I'd like to turn things over to Jenny Kate Purcell, along with Paige Schock from Focus. Jenny Kate, take it away.
Great, thank you, Gloria, and welcome everyone to today's webinar, Steering Rebates in the Right Direction and Maximizing Profitability for Infor Users. We do appreciate you making time in your day to review our Focus solution for rebates and how it can help you maximize profitability. My name is Jenny Kate, and I'm on the marketing team here at Focus. I'll be your host today, and soon I'll be passing it over to Paige Schock, one of our solutions consultants. And as Gloria mentioned, we do want to make this very interactive, so please do send us your questions, and we're happy to answer at the end. I wanted to start off with some little background information on Focus. Focus delivers advanced intelligence and analytics for companies in the distribution, manufacturing, and retail industries. Our pre-built solution for Infor makes the implementation and user adoption a seamless process. We work with a number of Infor users like you, so we do strive to make our software helpful and relevant to the success of your business. The Focus solution allows users to easily drill down from high-level visuals into the underlying data. You can explore your ERP and other data in a way that is quick, easy, and comprehensive. And specifically regarding rebates, we've taken data analytics best practices and integrated them with a rebates program that can help you eliminate many management headaches. In distribution businesses, including those running Infor, rebates can have the power to make or break margins, so tracking them correctly can help protect your bottom line. Soon we'll be demonstrating how you can maximize rebates with suppliers or steer customers in the right direction while reducing error and the burden of managing rebates. Focus Rebates can help your business make rebates management easy, predictable, and accurate, indicate which rebates bracket was reached and how far away a higher level rebate is, can help you see a more holistic view of your business after rebates are factored into budgets and sales, and it will increase automation and visibility. Now I'll be passing it over to Paige to give you a demonstration. Over to you, Paige.
All right, thank you, Jenny Kate. Hello. Welcome. Thank you to everyone for taking some time out of your day to go through a quick product demo of our Focus Rebates product. Just a brief introduction. My name is Paige Schock. I'm a solutions consultant with Focus. I worked in wholesale distribution for 10 years in residential building materials in the New York metro area. Most of my time there was in supply chain, so I'm very familiar in my work experience from dealing with rebates, mostly vendor rebates and supplier rebates, that sort of thing. So hopefully we're going to bring a little bit of that experience to the demo today, to any questions that you might ask, and make this something worthwhile for you. So just a quick note, if you haven't seen Focus before, Focus is a BI tool that reads transactional data from your ERP, from your Infor ERP, and loads it into our data analytics tool. When I say transactional data, I mean invoice line items, purchase order line items, as well as GL postings, inventory balances, et cetera, et cetera. This is important, and I'm going to refer to this later on, but we are looking at the actual line items that are coming out of your ERP. So to quickly dovetail on a couple of things that Jenny Kate had mentioned, I want you to think about three things as we're going through this demo. Right, we've got a key value proposition that we think rebates provides to the market, and the first is accuracy. I'm sure that many of you have rebate programs that represent somewhere between maybe 20–25% of your EBITDA at the end of the year, and so it's really important to make sure that you're collecting everything that's due. If you recognize the scale of the dollars at stake, you may not necessarily be marrying that up with the right type of tracking program. I've seen a lot of people who are doing it in Excel. It becomes very difficult to manage that, and it's subject to a lot of different errors. The second thing I want you to keep in mind is automation. So if you do have a tracking program right now, or some sort of tracking process, and you're doing it in Excel or manually or ad hoc in some fashion, you're spending a lot of time putting the information together, and you're not spending a ton of time actually doing anything with that rebate tracking information or data. And so that's kind of something where we want to be able to empower you or enable you to spend more time working with the data and finding insights in your data, rather than just formatting and collecting and putting together all the rebate tracking information. Okay, so the third thing then is visibility. So once I've got accurate rebates and once I've got an automated tracking process, now I'm in a position where I can really drill into the visibility of my rebates and understand where it is that I can either make changes or improvements to really build upon the contribution of profitability that my rebates represent. So that's something that I'm going to spend a lot of time on during the call, and you'll hear me sort of reference these three factors. But accuracy, automation, and visibility, those are three big things that we're putting forward today, and hopefully you'll see the same. So, okay, so now into the demo proper. So I'm looking at my home page right now in Focus. Rebates is a separate module. If I go to my hamburger menu here on the left, you see I have rebates down here at the bottom. So when I launch Rebates, it'll take me into the actual module. Now, the way that Focus Rebates works is we're looking at that transactional data that I referenced earlier, and we're reading that to find out which rebates qualify for, or which transactions qualify for rebates according to your vendors or the customer rebates that you're offering. What is the amount of the rebate that you get on that transaction, right? So there's a calculation step. And then we're pushing that data out to databases and dashboards that allows us to really get that, that visibility I mentioned into the rebates, right? So we're only doing those three things. We're looking at which transactions qualify, we're running the calculations, and then we're pushing the data out. Focus Rebates works for your vendor rebates, so vendor volume rebates. It works for customer loyalty incentive rebates, and it'll work for your sales commissions. And we've got about 30 customers in the U.S. Who are live on the software now. It's only been out for about 2 years. All of whom, or several of whom, are using it for multiple different functions within those three that I mentioned. So for the sake of this demo, I'm going to assume that we're talking about vendor volume rebates. The same principles and that sort of structure apply, whether it's vendor volume rebates or customer incentive rebates or sales commissions. But I'm going to use vendor volume, just kind of sake of argument, makes it a little bit easier. So this is a listing of all of my different rebate rules. Okay, so we enter in individual rebate rules that are essentially logical components of the vendor rebate programs you might receive. So what do I mean when I say that? Let's unpack it a minute. If you get a rebate program from a vendor, it might have several different components, several different levels to that program that you can qualify for rebates in different ways. So, for example, you might have a vendor rebate program where you get a base, sort of a base incentive or a base rebate on all purchases, say 5% on everything. And then you might have other levels within that program where if you grow 10% over the prior year, you get an additional kicker, right? So maybe you get another 1% back to $1. And then you might have multiple levels within the program where you get certain incentives based on your purchases of certain products or product lines, right? So if you buy a certain amount of pipe or wire or whatever your business is, you'll get a kicker on just those purchases. Okay, so in a situation like that, each one of those levels or components ends up being its own rebate rule. And I'm going to use those 3 or 4 examples to set up some example rules to kind of show you how it works within the tool. So So let's start with that base incentive rebate. Okay, I go into the rule. This is a receivable rebate, meaning that I'm receiving it from my vendor. But we also, as I mentioned, do payables. So that would be your customer loyalty rebates and your sales commission. So base incentive rebate. I can give it a description if I want. I can assign it to various groups for reporting period purposes, and I'll show you how we use that a little bit later. This first tab, once I've entered in the name and everything at the top, is the general tab, and this is where we filter out those transactions that qualify for the rebate, right? So this is what I was referencing a little bit earlier, where we're identifying the transactions that actually end up qualifying for that vendor rebate program, or the component that we're interested in of that vendor rebate program. So we enter in the validation period. We'll say this one is a 2019 rebate. And the next step is to enter in the based on dimension. So the based on dimension is coming out of your focus source database. So again, those transaction line items that we have that are pulling out of your ERP are being loaded into focus databases for the use of the analytics tool. So those databases are grouped into things like sales, purchases, and accounts receivable, and general ledger, et cetera. So in this case, we're actually using the purchasing database. So the dimensions within the purchasing database end up being these different categories by which we can filter, slice, and dice and display data. But for rebates, we use it mainly as a filter to identify what subset of transactions qualify for the rebate. So just very simply, if we're thinking about vendor rebates and we're thinking about a base rebate program or a base incentive program, we're probably just talking about all purchases from that supplier. Okay. So I'll click on the supplier. When I do that, my list of suppliers comes up, and again, this is pulling from my source database. Okay, I can scroll down and identify the vendor that I want. I can type in and search. I'm just going to click this top vendor for sake of argument. Okay, so once I've done that, I've set up the filter the way I want it for the transactions that qualify for this rebate. The next step is to set up the brackets. And so the brackets are going to be where we determine with those purchase dollars that qualify for the rebate, what calculation, what math do we do on those dollars to come up with the rebate amount? So in this case, the calculation method is going to be a percentage of PO cost. We'll give it a starting period, January. Bracket basis is going to be that PO cost. And when I hit save, that's going to activate the bracket section down there at the bottom. Okay, so in the beginning for this example, I said that let's say that this is a rebate where we're getting 5% back on all of our purchases from that vendor. I'm going to hit new. Now I have some amount from and amount to options, but again, I'm getting it on everything, so I don't need to put a floor or ceiling on my target. And I just put in 5% and hit save and close. Okay, so that would be a base rebate that I've just set up. I hit save and close, takes me back out to the main module, and there I can see my base incentive rebate. But let's talk about some of the more advanced examples. You know, if all your rebates were base incentive rebates, it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal to track them in Excel because it's a very simple calculation. But that's hardly ever the case with vendors. One of the things I've been in distribution for about 15 years now. One of the things that I've noticed over the years, I'm sure you've seen the same, is vendors are becoming more and more adept at targeting their rebate programs to incentivize you to the most profitable activities for them, right? They're trying to get you to buy the products or buy the mix of products that's going to represent the greatest amount of profit for them. So of course there's that sort of loyalty or base incentive rebate, but there's also these tiered rebate structures and these very targeted rebate qualifications that is something that you also will run into with vendors and need to keep in mind. So let's enter in one of those now. So we'll do a receivable. We'll call this a tiered tiered rebate, or an incentive rebate, a growth incentive rebate rather. Okay. Same sort of thing. I need to put in the validation period. Pick a baseline. And now I'm going to go back to that bracket tab. So again, this is going to be based on a percentage of PO cost. We'll have it start in January, and we'll have the bracket basis be PO cost. So what might a tiered rebate look like, or a growth rebate look like? So there's two examples that kind of popped to my mind. A vendor might give you a rebate where on the first $10,000 of purchases, you don't get any rebate. Then the second $10,000, you get 2%. Then the third $10,000, you get 3%, and then above that, you get maybe 4%, something like that. So I can enter that into the brackets section pretty easily. So we'll say 0 to 10,000. I'm not getting anything, right? So this is the amount from and the amount to in those purchase dollars. Hit save and new, and it starts me out at the bottom of the last bracket, or the top of the last bracket rather. Makes things pretty convenient for me. So we'll say $10,000 to $20,000, I get 2%. 20,000 to 30,000, I get 3%. And let's say 30,000 and up, I get 4%. So when I do a $30,000 and up, I don't have to put in that amount too, because you know, there's no upper range on how high I can go. So I'll hit save and close. And you can see what that bracket looks like now, right? It's pretty straightforward, pretty easy to read, and kind of understand what the ranges are and where you qualify or how you qualify within each of those ranges. If you're doing this in Excel, you know that you've got, you know, to build this, you've got a very nested, sort of convoluted formula that you have to put in place to get those calculations to work out, right? So with these tiered rebates, there are usually a couple of different types. One of the wrinkles that you might have is whether or not the rebate goes back to $1, right? So in this case, let's say that the rebate is $1, that I get the highest rebate percentage based on my attainment of purchases, and that goes all the way back across all my purchases. So for example, if I purchase $25,000 from this vendor, I get 3% on all $25,000. The other you know, flip side of that is an incremental rebate where you only get the amounts within the bracket. So in this case, it would be saying $25,000, I would get 0% on the first 10, 2% on the second 10, and then on that last 5,000, I would get 3%. So again, if you're doing that in Excel, it's a very convoluted, difficult calculation to put into place. We make it really easy. It's just a single toggle here under retrospective. Retrospective yes means you get back to $1. Retrospective no means it's incremental within the brackets. The other type of tiered rebate that you'll see is one where the vendor doesn't give you these absolute dollar figures, right? They're not giving you the dollar threshold that you have to reach. So they're just giving you growth percentages. Usually you can figure out what that is based on prior purchases or prior reporting from the vendor. But as you get more and more complicated or targeted rebates, it can be a little bit more difficult to figure out what that rebate is, or what those numbers are, what those targets are. We eliminate that difficulty. So if I flip my calculation type from absolute to growth, and I remove my brackets because they're based on the prior type, now you can see that I'm looking at growth percentage from and not dollar amounts. So where that growth percentage is coming from is my actual focus transaction data. So when we load all of that purchasing data in, we're not only capturing the new information, we're capturing some of the old information. So if you have a vendor who is basing your rebate incentive on growth over prior year, well, we have your prior year numbers, so we can calculate where you're at against that target throughout the course of the year. So just very quickly, say I have a vendor where 0 to 5% growth, I don't get anything. 5 to 10% growth, I get 2%. and 10% and over, maybe I'll get 3%. Again, very easy to understand and sort of conceive what's going on there, and very easy to read and put that calculation in place. Okay. So the last type of rebate that I'm going to go over with you are those really targeted rebates that are based on very specific product lines or product classes or any sort of conditions that the vendor really starts putting around those rebates. You know, I didn't spend a lot of time talking about that with those prior examples. So in this case, I'm actually going to clone my existing rebate because let's say it's from the same vendor. And most of the information is going to be the same. I just need to make a few changes. So I'll hit clone, creates a copy of the rebate. And I'm going to go in and say this is a product-specific rebate. Okay, so you can see it kept everything else the same. Now, you might have a vendor who says this rebate, whatever it is only for one specific category of your products, or maybe a list of certain products that you have. Again, it's very difficult to try to keep up with that in Excel, and if you are doing it in Excel or any sort of manual tracking program, it can be very, very difficult to or it's a very, very manual process, right? So we really want to automate that for you, so we make it nice and easy for you to really narrow down on the rebates that qualify for the program in question. And we do that using this include and exclude option here. So if I hit new, I get this pop up, and again, I'm referencing the dimensions that are coming from my source database. So if I click on this, you can see I have things like product, product class, product subclass, and so on. So for this example, let's say that this rebate is only for one particular product class. And my demo data here is a lighting distributor. Let's say it's only illumination products. Okay, so by doing that, now what I'm telling Focus is, okay, this rebate is for any purchases within this period from this supplier, but only of products that fall into this class. Right, so it becomes very, very easy to sort of narrow down and say, okay, this is a very targeted rebate, and I only want to grab those selections. But I can go further with this, right? Maybe there are certain conditions under the exclusions that I need to add in. So, say for example, it's all illumination product, but you know the vendor doesn't pay rebates on special order product or custom work, something like that. Right? If you have that categorized, you can very easily exclude that. Another common example, a vendor may not pay on drop ships. So I've got a PO order status dimension here. If I scroll down, I've got direct ships, and I can exclude those as well. So now what I'm saying is I really narrowed down the rebates for which, the transactions for which qualify for the rebate. It's this time period, this vendor, this product class, but no products that fall into the special subclass or that were brought in via direct ship. So that's really the power of Focus rebates is allowing you to really drill down to those transactional level information and really closely identify which ones qualify for which rebate. There's a lot of flexibility built into the product to be able to keep up with the evolving complexity that's sort of coming to light in vendor rebate programs. So once you've entered in all your rebate programs, this ends up getting scheduled into overnight calculations. So the way that Focus works, again, if you're not familiar, we extract data from your ERP every night. We upload it into our system via secure FTP, and that kicks off refreshes of all these databases and dashboards, and we're going to see some of those in a second. When the source database updates, when the database that contains all your purchasing data or your sales data updates, it's going to kick off a scheduled calculation of all of these different rebate rules, which are then going to get loaded into their own database. Right? That's very complicated. The only thing that you really need to know is when you come in the morning, your rebates information is going to be up to date as of close of business prior day. And there was no sort of human interaction necessary to get there. Again, like I've been saying, completely automated. Okay, so that's how the module works. Now I want to spend spend some time talking about what you're going to get in terms of visibility, right? So if we can get you accurate calculations, if we can get you automated calculations, that really does free up a lot of your time to be spent really investigating your rebate programs and learning a little bit more about where you can enhance your profitability. And that's where the rest of the time there in the demo is going to be spent. So the results of all these calculations get pushed out into a series of databases and dashboards. So this is a very, very simple rebates dashboard that I built in my demo environment. I can scroll down, I see here are my vendor rebates so far on this amount of rebated purchases. That's kind of a low number. It's only about 1.2% of all my purchases, so maybe that's something I need to look at. I've got my customer rebates as well. I'm tracking rebates and purchases by month, so I can kind of see how things are trending. And then I've got both my vendor rebates and my product rebates broken out by product classes. So I'm going to scroll back up to the top and focus. If you're not familiar with any of your dashboard widgets, you can click on this Analyze button, and it'll take you into the underlying data. Okay, so what I'm looking at now is the focus grid, focus database. Just a brief tour. You have measures and records here in the center section. Down the left-hand side, you have dimensions. That's kind of the dimensions I was referring to previously in the module. And then you've got options across the top for manipulating and displaying the data in different ways. So in this case, what I'm looking at is I'm looking at two suppliers. I'm looking at the rebates I've earned from these suppliers in each of these months. And I'm now in a position where I can start comparing the two. So a couple of things to note right off the bat. Because we're looking at the line item level transactions from your purchasing data and calculating the rebates directly on them, we can match up the date that you quote unquote earned the rebate with the date that you received the shipment, or that your vendor invoiced you, or that you paid for the shipment, right? Whatever that date is. What that allows you to do is really tighten up your accounting practices, really. So right now, I'm sure many of you, if there are any CFOs or controllers in the room, you have to do sort of a monthly accrual for your rebates, and you might be just using an estimate that's been derived from prior year's purchases and then rebates received. And then what ends up happening is at the end of the year, really into the following year, when you finally receive those rebates, you now have to make some sort of adjusting entry to those accruals that you've been building up to correct the entry for what you actually receive. So focus rebates gets you away from that, or at least should get you much closer to the real numbers. So you can see now, instead of having to come up with an estimate for each of these given months, I can put my accrual for the actual amount, right? And that's, again, because we're pulling that transactional line item information. So that's the first thing that you can do here. The second thing that you can do is you can start investigating kind of what the return on your purchases is for as far as rebates go, right? And then that allows you to do some additional things. So I'm going to switch to total mode. I'm going to get rid of those periods. I'm going to add some additional measures. Well, first, before I do, if I compare these two vendors, I can see Longship Engineering. I've got $69,000 in rebates so far this year, and SDS I've got $50,000. But when I add in my PO cost and my rebates as a percent of purchases, now I'm going to learn some more information. So what I'm gathering now is that I've got this rebates as a percent of purchases where I'm getting almost 3 times as many rebates as a percent of purchases from Longship as I am from SDS. And you can clearly see that, right? $70,000 in rebates against 3.4 million of purchases versus 50 against about 6.5. So that's telling me where my purchase dollars in some respects are better spent. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit during the demo. One thing that I could do with this is I could say, if these are two competing vendors or vendors that sell overlapping product lines, I can incorporate this percentage into kind of my general profitability analysis when thinking about these vendors, right? If one's pricing happens to be slightly higher or lower than the other, well, I need to take in these rebate percentages to be able to really kind of true up, evaluating the different price bases. The second thing I could do is I've got these two vendors, maybe they're selling similar product. Maybe I go to Longship Engineering and say, hey, if I steer several more $1 million worth of purchases your way, can you improve even further on the rebate program that you're offering me? Or maybe I go to SDS and say, hey, your competitors' rebate programs are much more incentivizing than yours. You're kind of out of line with the market. I need you to really improve what you're doing. Okay, so you get into sort of some strategic purchasing decisions with this reporting tool that really allows you to be able to maximize that profitability. From here, I can get some additional information as well. I can click on Longship, and if you've ever used Focus before, this will feel very familiar. But I can click on Longship and focus on just those results. And now I can start drilling in a little bit further. So maybe I want to see how those results break out by product class. Okay, so it's all illumination product, no problem. Let me look at which subclasses it's in. Okay, so now I can see for each of these subclasses within illumination from this supplier over this time period, what are the total rebate amounts? And what were the PO costs and the rebates as a percent of purchases? And I can drill down even further and go to the actual product. So now I can see how much as a percent of total purchases I'm making on these different products in terms of rebates. So you can really kind of identify where your profitable products are, or at least which products give you the bigger return as far as your rebate percentages. The next thing that you can do here is you can drill all the way into the transaction level, right? So I can go from total mode to transaction mode, and I can see the individual line items on the purchase orders where these came in. So I can see the different dates, I can see the code, I can see the code and the name for the product, and then again, these measures that we've been looking at. So if a vendor ever comes back to you and says, okay, your rebates for the year are 20,000 and your totals, according to Focus Rebates, are 21,000, well, you'll always be able to produce the transactions and sort of prove how you came to that $21,000 number, and then put that back on the vendor to them to show you where there might be a discrepancy, right? And sometimes vendors make mistakes, they miss rebates to which you're entitled. Whatever the cause is, you want to be able to prove it out down to the transaction level so that you can make sure you're getting every rebate for which you qualify, which you've earned. Okay, so this is sort of the base reporting package that you get with Focus Rebates. Again, you can drill through the vendors and suppliers and see where you're earning your rebates. You can go down, if you scroll down a little bit, we can take a look at the individual rebate codes and how they contribute. So these are the rebate rules from the module that we were looking at. We also have those groups that I mentioned before. So if you have different categories of rebates that you want to group together for some reason, you can use that as a reporting feature. A very common example, and I'm sure there are some buying group members on the call, is if you're a member of a buying group, but you also have sort of independent rebates or secondary rebates, you might group those into two different groups. So you might have, your buying group rebates in a group, and then everything else in a second group. But we give you a lot of flexibility to be able to slice and dice through the data pretty quickly. So the next level of visibility that we offer is understanding where you at against your tiered rebate programs. So this is something that we sort of alluded to in the introduction, but one of the things that ends up happening with rebates is that it takes a lot of effort to be able to make sure that you're maximizing your return, right? Or that you've hit the highest tier that makes sense for you to hit. One of the things that happened to me back in my supply chain days was I'd be, sitting in my office on a November afternoon, and the vendor rep would come in and say, hey, if you buy another $100,000 worth of product, you're going to hit your next highest rebate tier. You're going to get a higher percentage. And that's good. I do want to know that information, but firstly, I would like to know that information a little bit earlier in the year. So instead of having to load up on inventory at the very end of the year, I can kind of spread out the hit to my balance sheet throughout the course of the year, and then also make sure I'm in a good position when the calendar turns over, so I didn't load up in December and now I'm not buying anything in January, right? right? I had a customer call that mortgaging your January for rebates, where you make this big spend in December, and then you don't buy anything in January, so now you have to hit next year's target, which might be higher, only 11 months out of the year, since you're not buying anything in January. So that's the first thing. I want to know sooner. And the second thing is I don't know that vendor that's spending more purchasing dollars with that vendor is the best bang for my buck, right? There might be vendors out there or rebate programs out there where I could spend less and make more as an absolute dollar figure, or as a relative dollar figure, rather. And that's what our Nearmiss is designed to do. It's to allow you to be able to account for those two things. So this is a solution that's fairly new, maybe the last year or so, where we're looking at exactly that sort of gap analysis between where am I at right now, what more do I have to get to the next highest rebate tier, and then what do I earn once I get there, right? So I've got my total rebates, my guaranteed rebates. I've got these two key measures here, which are only show me those rebates that I'm very, very close to hitting. So 90% of the way, or 80 to 90% of the way towards hitting that next highest bracket. So I'm going to go into one of these. I'm just going to hit that analyze button again. And now you can see here the guaranteed rebates I've got so far on these different rebate rules. But I actually want to see more information about these rebates. I know they're within 90% of the next bracket, but I need to learn a little bit more. I've actually got a favorite that'll show me that. And again, a favorite is just a canned report within Focus, if you're not familiar, that allows you to save how you look at your data. There we go. Now I've got some really good information. So what this is telling me, just to give you a quick tour, is here is the rebate rule or the rebate program. Here's the bracket I'm currently in, as well as the next bracket, my current transaction amount. So for just this top line here, I'm in the $0 to $80,000 bracket, and I can see that because I've only purchased $74,000. My next bracket is $80,000 to $100,000. If I scroll over just a little bit, you can see how I've transformed this into really good information. So I'm looking at what my current guaranteed rebate is. I'm looking at what the distance to the next bracket is. And then I'm also calculating what the extra rebate is that I'm going to earn once I hit that next bracket. So that's the amount I'll earn at a minimum on the next bracket minus what I've got so far. Okay, so once I've got all these figures, now I can do something pretty cool, and I can say, for every dollar of inventory that I spend to hit that next highest bracket, how many rebate dollars am I going to get back in return? So for this first one, I'm going to spend another $5,400, an additional $766. I'm getting it. That sounds all right. But again, like I said, I want to know if there are places where I can better spend my dollars in order to maximize my rebate return. So I'm going to go ahead and sort this. And you can see I've actually got a rebate situation here where the current bracket is 0 to 5,000. The next bracket is 5 to 10. And I'm at almost $5,000, right? I'm only $65 away, right? So right now I've earned $21. If I just don't purchase anything else, I'm going to earn $21 from this rebate. But if I spend another $65, I'm going to get an additional $478 on that rebate program, right? So for every dollar I spend, that's 65, I'm going to get $7.34 back in rebate dollars. But this is such a small, absolute dollar number that I would never have known this. I may not even have that vendor rep who comes into my office to tell me about this program, right? So this is where the value of the Nearmiss analysis is. The first thing is that it does update through the year, so you can always see where you're at throughout the entire course of the year and understand kind of how much more you have to go. So if you're close, if you know you're already close in August, great, you can just spend a little bit more and get there by the end of the year. If you're only halfway there in August, well, now you need to really think, okay, does it make sense for me to stretch and try to achieve that next highest bracket, or should I just lay back and not get the rebate, not max out my rebate this year, and maybe have a slightly lower target for next year? So that's the first thing. Second thing is it gives you true visibility into where the most profitability is going to come from your additional purchases to meet your rebates, right? It's no longer going to be relying just on what that vendor rep says or your own sort of intuition about who your top vendors are, your traditional top vendor programs. You're actually going to get data that says, here, if you spend $65 more, you're going to get 7 times that back in rebates that you earn. Okay, so that's just about the end of the demo. Just to kind of wrap up real quick, you know, what we're doing with Focus Rebates is we're giving you that automation, the accuracy, and the visibility into your rebate programs. We want to empower you to be able to really maximize the profitability that you're getting from those rebate programs, especially as I alluded to, they're an ever-increasing portion of the profit of your total profit at the end of the year. So it's obviously something that's very important to spend a little bit of time and effort on, and we want to give you the tools to be able to make sure that you're getting the best possible return. With that, I will turn it back over to Jenny Kate for Q&A.
Great, thanks, Paige. Great demo. We did have some questions come through, so I will start with that. We got a question: can you create dimensions for your quote-unquote include sections that are not driven by your ERP data?
Yes, and that's an excellent question. So one of the things that you run into with ERP data is the way that you're reporting on your products, for example, may not be the same way that your vendor categorizes products for the sake of rebates, right? You may just use totally different categories or have products in different categories. That's not a problem. With Focus, what we can do is we can take either spreadsheets or flat files or whatever the easiest way is for you, and remap your products into new categories without disturbing anything in your ERP. So if you have products 1, 2, 3 in category A, and the vendor's got it in category B, well, we can, for the purposes of rebates, put it into category B in such a way that matches up with what the vendor's doing. And like I said, we can do that with a quick spreadsheet, a flat file, a CSV. We've got a lot of different options there, and that's something that your implementation consultant with rebates would work with you to achieve.
Okay, great. And everybody feel free to keep submitting questions since we do have 15 minutes left. But there was another one. They said, I realize that SX.e does not allow us to enter records for growth, etc. But for the standard product lines, etc., would we be double entering the parameters in this tool? Or can the existing records we have be mapped or loaded into this system or vice versa?
Yeah, so that is a good question. You would have to do double entry. Now that being said, we make all sorts of things, or we have all sorts of sort of features within the program where, where you wouldn't have to like key in everything every single time. Like you can clone rebates. You know, when your year rolls over, you can clone the entire project and copy it over to the new date. So that makes life a lot easier. So you don't have to key in everything every single time. That's only the case for actual entering the rules. All of the record data is coming directly out of your ERP. So if you classified your products a certain way for rebate purposes, we'll pull that out of your SX.e data. That's not a problem. The other thing is that we think that the return on investment on the time is makes it time well spent. So you do end up keying in all these rebate rules in the beginning. Once that's done, though, you really shouldn't have to go back and do it ever again. So whatever your tracking system is now, if it's not giving you the visibility that you need, if it's not giving you the type of reporting that you want, it might be worth even going through a little bit of that double key entry effort just to get the better visibility and to be able to maximize your profitability around rebates.
Great, thank you, Paige. We do have some time left. I'm going to wait another minute, see if any questions come through. No more questions? Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Paige, for the demo, and this does bring us to the conclusion of our webinar. If you do want to learn more, you can contact us by emailing marketing@focussoftware.com, or you can call the number that's being shown on the screen right now, and we'll be happy to schedule a personalized demonstration for your business. Additionally, if you do think of any other questions, feel free to send marketing@focussoftware.com an email as well. And thanks everyone for joining, and thank you, TUG, for hosting us today. Unless there's any other questions, I think we're going to wrap up, and everybody can disconnect now and enjoy the rest of their day.
And before everyone disconnects, I'd just like to remind you that if you'd like to share this content with your colleagues, the session has been recorded and it will be posted to the TUG website tomorrow for your review by simply clicking on the YouTube link and icon, and it'll be in the upper left-hand corner of the YouTube TUG landing page. Paige and Jenny Kate, thanks so much for the great content today, and we look forward to hosting with you again.
Great. Thank you, Gloria. Thanks, everyone.